Did you know Johnny Depp almost got fired from Pirates of the Caribbean, just a few days into filming? Yeah, sounds unbelievable, right? The role that basically turned him into a global legend, almost didn't happen. Crazy. But here's the thing about Johnny. He's never been the type to do what people expect. He's the kind of person who sees a rule and thinks, what happens if I bend this just a little? And that's exactly why we're still talking about him today. It's not just the roles. It's the choices. If you've ever felt out of place or worried that being different might hold you back, then this story is going to hit home. Because today, we're diving into 4 bold moves Johnny Depp made that didn't just change his life, they made him a cultural icon. And by the end of this video, you might just feel a little braver about your own weirdness too. So let's get into it. Let's start with the pirate. You know the one. Jack Sparrow. The eyeliner. The slurred speech. The constant wobble like he's lost at sea even when he's standing still. In 2003, Disney had big plans for Pirates of the Caribbean. Big budget. Big marketing. Big expectations. And then in walks Johnny Depp with this totally bizarre version of a pirate. He's acting drunk, mumbly, kind of like a washed-up rock star from the 70s. Executives were not amused. Some of them thought he was messing up the movie. One of them even called him into a meeting and flat out asked if he was drunk or mentally off. But Johnny? He didn't back down. He explained that Jack Sparrow wasn't just a pirate, he was a pirate with personality. He'd based him partly on Keith Richards, the legendary Rolling Stones guitarist, and even a bit on Pepe Le Pew, the cartoon skunk who thinks he's romantic. Weird, right? But somehow, it worked. Instead of dialing it back, Johnny leaned in even harder. He made Jack funnier. Stranger. More unpredictable. And guess what? Audiences didn't just accept it, they loved it. Jack Sparrow became one of the most beloved movie characters of all time. Just think about that. Imagine if Johnny had caved. If he'd done what the studio wanted. If he'd played it safe. Would Pirates of the Caribbean even be the same? Probably not. And that takes us to his next bold move, saying no. Saying no to the stuff everyone else would have jumped at. Let's be real. Most actors are climbing over each other to land a big studio franchise. The next big superhero movie. The next romance drama. The Oscar bait. But Johnny? He turned down Speed. He passed on Titanic. He dodged a bunch of blockbuster roles that could have made him even richer, even more famous. Why? Because they didn't feel right. He wasn't chasing the spotlight, he was chasing something more interesting. He once said he'd rather be the guy who makes people uncomfortable than the one who just plays it safe. That's a pretty gutsy thing to say in Hollywood. And you can see that in the roles he did choose. Edward Scissorhands. Silent, pale, and has literal scissors for hands. Not your typical heartthrob. But Johnny made it work. He made the character feel soft, and human, and oddly beautiful. Again and again, he picked characters that were weird. Broken. Different. The kind of roles that most stars would have skipped. And instead of hiding from those roles, he made them shine. And here's the thing, those risky choices. That's what made him stand out. Because when you think of Johnny Depp, you don't just think of one movie, you think of style. A vibe. A certain kind of magic. And a big part of that magic comes from his creative partnership with Tim Burton. Now, you know how some people just click creatively? Like they get each other without even needing to explain? That's Johnny and Tim. Since the early 90s, they've worked on 8 films together. Edward Scissorhands, Sleepy Hollow, Sweeney Todd, Corpse Bride, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the list goes on. What's interesting is, none of those movies are what you'd call safe. They're dark. They're strange. They're full of odd characters and twisted stories. But Johnny leaned into it. Every time. Because working with Tim gave him the freedom to get weird. To explore characters that weren't polished or pretty or clean-cut. They were messy. Emotional. Sometimes even disturbing. And people loved it. It's not just about loyalty, either. It's about trust. Johnny trusted Tim's vision. And Tim trusted Johnny's instincts. Together, they created a kind of storytelling that was offbeat but unforgettable. That's another big reason Johnny became a cultural icon. He wasn't afraid to double down on the things that made him different. He built his brand around it. But here's the part that might be the boldest of all, the part that doesn't get talked about enough. When the world turned on him, he stayed quiet. Over the past few years, Johnny's life got dragged into headlines. He went through public trials. Ugly accusations. Personal texts and videos shared with the world. People took sides. Some defended him. Others attacked him. The media was loud. Social media was brutal. And through all that, Johnny didn't rant. He didn't do a press tour. He didn't flood the internet with defenses or angry tweets. He stayed silent. That silence? That patience? It spoke louder than any statement. He let time do the talking. And when things finally started to shift, when people started seeing the full picture, he didn't gloat. He didn't play the victim. He quietly returned to music. Started working again. Took on new roles. He picked up the pieces and just moved forward. In an industry where drama often becomes identity, Johnny chose dignity. And that's powerful. Because being bold isn't always about doing something loud. Sometimes, it's about knowing when not to speak. Knowing who you are, especially when everyone else is trying to tell your story for you. So now, let's take a step back and look at it all together. He played a pirate like a drunk rock star when no one thought it would work. He turned down some of the biggest movies ever because they didn't feel like him. He stuck with a strange, creative director and made some of the weirdest roles in film history. And when his life got flipped upside down, he didn't scream for attention. He stood quietly. And waited. Those aren't just career moves. They're life choices. And they weren't easy. Any one of them could have backfired. He could have been forgotten. Laughed at. Rejected. But instead, those choices made him. They made him unforgettable. They made him an icon. And maybe the real lesson here is that you don't have to fit the mold. You don't have to follow the path that everyone else says is right. You just have to follow the one that's yours. So let me ask you something. What's one bold decision you made, big or small? That people didn't understand at the time, but now you're proud of? Think about it. And if you feel like sharing, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, it really does help more than you know. Want more stories like this? Go check out our video on The Evolution of Jack Sparrow, trust me, it's worth your time. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got more coming your way, stories about creativity, courage, and the people who dared to be different. Thanks for watching. Stay bold. Stay weird. Stay you.